The grand gallery of Erelon's winter palace smelled faintly of varnish and dust. Pale morning light filtered through the tall stained glass windows, casting amber reflections on the marble floors. On the far wall, a new painting hung, elegant, soft, unfinished at the edges. Cassian, the first emperor of Erelon, stood before it in silence. The portrait depicted a young woman seated in a velvet chair, her hands resting delicately in her lap. She wore a gown of soft rose silk, her shoulders bare, her posture graceful and composed. Her eyes were downcast, demure, perhaps shy. Her features were finely drawn, almost delicate. He studied it, searching for something. "This is the Princess of Lys?" he asked, without turning. His advisor cleared his throat behind him. "Her Royal Highness, Princess Seraphina, yes. The court of Lys assures us the likeness is recent. The portrait was sent with their letter of intent." Cassian narrowed his eyes. "It seems too perfect. The artist is well regarded in Lys. Perhaps he was generous, or perhaps he painted someone else." The advisor stiffened. "Your Majesty," Cassian shook his head. "Nothing." He walked away from the painting slowly, hands clasped behind his back. He hated portraits, hated the way they smoothed out humanity, replaced honesty with diplomacy. Yet this one, it pulled at something. A memory, a ghost. His late wife had once posed in that same chair. He had not stood in this gallery since her death 3 winters ago. The court of Lys had sent the proposal 2 months prior. Their duchy, while small, sat at the border of 3 kingdoms, a valuable trade partner, and an even more valuable ally. Cassian had refused marriage negotiations for years. He was only 34, but grief had aged him. Duty, war, and loss had carved hollows under his eyes, stiffened his smile. But this offer he could no longer ignore. The council had insisted. The alliance would secure the southern provinces, and the people were growing restless. They needed a celebration, a wedding, a future. So Cassian finally had agreed. The portrait, serene, graceful, ghost-like, had not hurt what he didn't know. What no one had told him was that Princess Seraphina had been ill when the artist was summoned. The woman in the portrait was her lady-in-waiting, Charlene, who had stood in for the sitting. There had been no intention to deceive, only haste, formality, and poor communication. Lys had needed to send something, and Seraphina, tired of being evaluated like livestock, had allowed it. Now, her face, her true face, remained unknown to the emperor she was meant to marry. That evening, Cassian returned to the gallery once more. He stared at the soft face on the canvas. She looked like a dream he could never quite remember. If she was anything like the painting, perhaps he could make peace with the past. Perhaps he could love again, and far across the sea of snowy mountains. A carriage rolled quietly toward her, carrying a young woman who had no idea her face, her real face, had yet to be seen. The throne hall of Erelon was nothing short of theatrical. Carved marble, pillars stretched toward a ceiling painted with gods and storms. Velvet banners lined the walls in deep navy and gold, the colors of the empire. And at the center, beneath a grand archway of light, stood the man who ruled it all, Emperor Cassian I. In full ceremonial dress, silver clasped over his shoulder, sword at his side, he waited. Behind him the court whispered. The procession from Lys was announced with great formality. Trumpets, gold-trimmed guards. The Duke of Lys entered first, regal and stern, followed by his daughter, Princess Seraphina. Cassian stepped forward and stopped. The woman before him did not match the painting at all. Seraphina stood tall, shoulders square, but her face betrayed tension. Her dark curls were pinned simply. Her skin was sun-warmed, her figure fuller, her features bolder, strong cheekbones, large eyes that did not lower like in the portrait, but met his directly. She curtsied with measured grace. "Your Majesty." Cassian did not immediately respond. A long silence followed. The court shifted uncomfortably. He took 1 step forward, then 2. His eyes scanned her, not in awe, not in appreciation, but with calculation. "This is unexpected," he said coldly. Seraphine's lips barely moved. "I understand the portrait did not prepare you." "No," he said, voice flat. "It did not." He turned toward the Duke. "Was this an error?" The Duke stiffened. There was no deception intended. The portrait was painted during the princess's illness. A lady-in-waiting stood in her place. "We had no time to explain before the shipment." Cassian's jaw tightened. "So the woman I saw, the one I agreed to receive, was not her?" "No," Seraphina said. her voice steady. "You never saw me. Until now." Gasps rippled through the court. Cassian looked at her again, eyes unreadable. Then, very quietly, he said, "Then there is no agreement." The words fell like snow, soft and deadly. Seraphine's chest rose. "Once, I see." She did not argue. She did not cry. Instead, she curtsied again, this time not as a bride, but as a diplomat, and she turned to leave. That night, the news spread through the palace like fire through silk. The emperor rejected her. "She's not the woman in the portrait. Did you see her face, her figure? She didn't even flinch. He didn't even give her a second." Chance Serafina stood at her chamber window, looking over the snowy rooftops of Erelon. Her maid, Elise, hovered nearby. "You should send word to your father," Elise whispered. "We'll leave by morning." "No," Serafina said. Elise stared at her. "You're staying." After that, Seraphine's hands trembled only slightly as she unpinned her necklace. "I didn't come here to be married," she said. "I came because they offered peace. If I leave now, I give them reason to treat me as irrelevant. I will not let my worth be decided by a mistake." Elise swallowed. "Even if the emperor treats you like, let him," Serafina said. "He doesn't know me." She turned away from the window. "But he will." A week passed, and the Princess of Lys did not leave. She remained in the eastern wing of the Winter Palace, where foreign dignitaries were usually housed, a place far from the royal chambers, far from the throne room, and even farther from the emperor's path. And yet, she was seen. Serafina dined alone at state functions with quiet dignity. She sat near the window at the opera, never speaking unless addressed. She visited the city's orphanage, where children clung to her skirts and merchants whispered behind their stalls, "Is that the one he rejected?" But she's so kind. Not what they expected, perhaps, but not what they say either. She never corrected the rumors. She simply existed with grace. The court didn't know what to do with her. She wasn't hiding. She wasn't fighting. She was enduring. In the mornings, she walked in the palace gardens, even as winter winds cut through. The hedges and snow lingered on the fountains. She never wore excessive furs. Her only accessory was a leather-bound notebook she carried everywhere. Inside, poems, letters, thoughts. She'd never say aloud. She wrote every day, and once, only once, she wrote his name, Cassian, so heavy, a crown for such an empty gaze. Meanwhile, the emperor tried to forget. He buried himself in state matters, trade disputes, road repairs, military funding, anything but the echo of his own harshness in that echoing throne room. But he saw her. In the corridors, in the court, in the corner of his eye. Always composed. Always silent. Until one morning she was not. He found her in the library. He hadn't meant to. Cassian entered, seeking records on ancient maritime routes, a report his minister had left for him there. But as he stepped into the quiet hall of shelves, he paused. She sat alone at a table by the tall arched window. A single shaft of winter light poured down over the open book before her. She didn't see him at first. Her lips moved softly, reading aloud to herself. Double quotes. And though they painted her in the image of another, it was her shadow that taught the kingdom to breathe again. Cassian froze, not because the words accused him, but because they sounded beautiful. Real. She looked up and saw him. Neither moved. "Your Majesty," she said calmly. "Princess." A long pause. "I didn't know you wrote poetry," he said. "I don't," she answered. "Only pain." Another silence. "I apologize if I've intruded." "You haven't," she said. "I'm merely reading. You're welcome to stay, or go." He didn't know why, but the words stung more than any insult. "I didn't mean to humiliate you," he said at last. She closed the book. "You didn't mean to see me." She stood, curtsied, not with sarcasm, but with solemnity, and left the room. Cassian stared at the book she had left behind. He did not open it, but he did not forget it either. And that night, he couldn't sleep. Winter softened in Erelon. Snow melted from the stone railings, and pale blossoms peeked from cracks in the palace garden. Spring had not yet arrived, but it lingered close like a secret, too shy to speak. And with the change of air, something else shifted on Cassian. He did not seek Serafina, but he noticed her at council dinners. He'd hear her voice, calm, clear, informed, never loud, never pleading, just present. She spoke of art, of diplomacy, of irrigation systems in the southern duchies, not because she needed attention, but because she understood the world. She was not the painted woman. She was more, and that, somehow, unsettled him, more than the deception ever had. One afternoon, Cassian returned to the library. The same window, the same table, the same woman, this time reading aloud to two small children from the palace's staff. They sat cross-legged at her feet, eyes wide. He stopped in the archway and watched, and though the dragon roared, the girl did not run, for she knew that beasts only feared what they could not break. The children clapped. Seraphina smiled. Cassian stepped closer. "They seem enchanted," he said. She looked up slowly. "Fairy tales are medicine for small hearts, and sometimes, for larger ones." He allowed himself a faint smile. "You believe in them?" "I believe they tell truths that courts forget." He nodded. And for the first time sat beside her. The children left, and quiet settled. Cassian picked up the book she'd read from. "I know this one. I was fond of it, as a boy." "So was I," she said, "though I always wondered why the girl had to tame the dragon, instead of letting it fly free." He looked at her. "Because not all beasts are safe." She met his gaze. "And not all kings are kind." A breathless silence. Cassian closed the book gently. "I was not kind to you." "No," she said. Another pause. "But you were honest. That's more than most are allowed to be." They sat for a long while. Two rulers, not in ceremony, but in silence. When he stood to leave, he hesitated. "You still write?" he asked. She looked down. "When I have something to say." He gave a small nod. "Then I hope you keep writing." She said nothing, but he saw the corners of her mouth twitch, as though she'd smiled. Just a little. Once he turned away. That night, Cassian sat by his fireplace, the painting of the wrong woman still hanging near his desk. He lit a match, and turned the canvas to face the wall. The spring masquerade was a tradition older than the empire itself. Once a year, nobility and commoners alike gathered in the grand atrium under flickering candlelight and silken banners. Masks concealed rank, identity, and expectation. For one night, everyone was equal, and no one was truly seen. Seraphina had not planned to attend, but something in her refused invisibility. She chose a mask of deep plum and gold, with intricate vines curling round the eyes. Her dress flowed, like ink under moonlight, modest, but unforgettable. Elise, her maid, fastened her curls into a crown-like knot. "You'll be noticed," Elise warned. Seraphina smiled faintly. For once, that's the point. Cassian had not planned to dance, but something in him ached to be unknown. He wore a mask of black leather and silver. He entered late, stood alone beneath the crystal chandelier, and watched as faceless laughter spun across the marble floor. He hated this, and yet, he stayed. It happened suddenly. He turned, and there she was. He didn't know her. He only saw a woman standing still among a sea of motion, her gaze resting softly on the music, not the men. She looked like she belonged nowhere, and yet carried herself as if the ballroom had been built for her alone. He stepped forward. "May I have this dance?" She didn't ask his name. She only nodded. Their hands met, and time bent around them. He didn't recognize her voice. Lower than he remembered, steady, serene. He didn't see her features, the mask covered enough. And yet, something about her felt known. They moved in quiet rhythm, not speaking, not needing to. After a long silence, he asked, "Why do you wear a mask?" "To be seen," she replied. "And if someone sees too much, then they deserve to." Cassian paused. A strange tightness rose in his chest. "You sound familiar," he said. "I'm not," she lied, but he heard the truth beneath it. As the music slowed, he leaned closer. Their faces nearly touched. "What if I wanted to see you?" he whispered. She looked up, and just as the candles flickered, her mask slipped slightly, and he knew. He pulled back. "Breath caught you." The word died. Seraphine's eyes widened, then cooled. She stepped away. He reached for her hand, but she was already disappearing into the sea of masks. By the time he followed, she was gone. That night, he returned to his chamber and stared into the fire. He had danced with the woman he rejected, and for the first time, he had felt something, not obligation, not guilt, but longing. Seraphina stood on her balcony, the night wind tugging at her gown. She held her mask in both hands, and wondered if the emperor would ever stop running from what was real. The morning after the masquerade, the palace hummed with whispers. "Did you see who he danced with?" "No, one knows who she was." He looked, changed. Cassian remained silent. He hadn't slept, he hadn't eaten, he had only searched for hours. He questioned servants, scanned the guest lists, replayed every step of the dance in his mind, and every word. There was no doubt. It had been her. Serafina.n. He had run. Again. At noon. He summoned her to his study. She declined formally, through a letter, written in her own hand. Your Majesty, I regret that I must decline your invitation. My dignity is not something I lend twice. No anger, no plea, just the mirror, held steadily before him. Cassian clenched the note in his fist. He paced. Then, with a sudden urgency, he stormed into the royal archives, a chamber where all correspondence from foreign courts was stored. Where are the Lycian letters? Demanded. A clerk brought them in a velvet box, dozens of envelopes, all unopened. He had never bothered to read them before the engagement. He had accepted based on the portrait alone. Now, trembling slightly, he opened the first dart. Dear Emperor Cassian, I am told we are to marry. I do not know you, nor you me, but I find myself curious. Do you like music? I prefer string quartets over grand orchestras. They remind me of the wind in Lys. They say, I am too loud when I laugh, too bold when I ride, too proud to be a good wife. I do not wish to be good. I wish to be real. Perhaps one day we'll sit in silence and know. It is enough. Cassian swallowed hard. He opened another, and another. Each letter was a piece of her, vulnerable, strong, thoughtful. Not a single word about beauty. Not a single word begging approval. She had offered him honesty from the beginning, and he had refused to see it. That night, he returned to the library, the same table, but she was not there. Only the book of poems she'd left behind. Inside it, a note. The truth is not always the one that flatters. He read every line she had written, some crossed out, some smudged by what might have been tears. One poem stopped his breath. You married a canvas, not a woman. You crowned a ghost, not a soul. But when the paint begins to peel, will you see me whole? Cassian closed the book slowly. The fire behind him flickered, and for the first time in years, the Emperor of Eralan felt small. Not because of weakness, but because of the greatness he had refused to honor. In the stillness of the night, he whispered aloud, I see you now. But she was not there to hear it. Cassian waited. 2 full days, not out of pride, but because he didn't know how to approach a woman he had once humiliated, a woman he now longed to know without pretense, without title. He rehearsed his words in the mirror, abandoned every draft he tried to write. Even the royal scribe, used to imperial commands, had never seen the emperor this lost for language. On the 3rd evening, he walked to the eastern wing alone. No guards, no crown, only Cassian, the man. Seraphine's chamber was modest, her door half open. Candlelight glowed from within. He knocked once, no answer. He stepped in gently. She stood by the fireplace, back turned, her figure bathed in soft gold, a simple braid down her back. No jewels, no tiara, just a woman in quiet thought. When she turned, she did not look surprised. I was wondering how long it would take you, she said. Cassian exhaled. Then you knew I'd come. I knew you'd try. Her voice held no anger, but it didn't hold warmth either. He stepped forward. Serafina, I stop, she said gently. He froze. She gestured to a chair. He sat. She didn't. You were cruel to me, she began. Yes, he said. You judged me by a painting. I did. You embarrassed me, and you dismissed me without a second thought. I know. He met her eyes, and I was wrong. She said nothing, only watched him. I read your letters, he said after a pause. All of them. Did you read them before rejecting me? No. Then they were never for you, she replied quietly. They were for the man I hoped you might be. Cassian closed his eyes. I don't deserve your forgiveness. You don't. Silence thickened. Then Serafina stepped closer, but not too close. I am not angry anymore, she said. But I do not owe you myself, just because you finally saw me. I don't want your submission, he said. I want your presence. If you'd offer it freely. She looked at him for a long time, and for the first time since her arrival, she let a single tear fall. I offered it once, she said, without condition, and you walked away. Cassian stood, slowly. He didn't reach for her. He only nodded. Solemnly, I understand. He turned to leave. At the door, he paused. I'll be in the garden at dawn, he said. Every day, not to chase you, but in case you ever want to meet me as yourself, and allow me to do the same. She didn't answer. And he walked out. That night, Serafina sat at her desk, opened a fresh page, wrote only 3 words. He finally knelt. Then, she blew out the candle. The sky was still pale when Serafina stepped outside. Mist curled around the hedges of the palace garden, soft and silver. Dew glistened on the petals of sleeping roses. The world had not yet woken, and that was why she chose this hour. She did not know if he would be there. She wasn't sure if she hoped he would, but he was. Cassian stood by the stone fountain, alone, his cloak barely shielding him from the morning chill. He didn't notice her at first. He was looking at the sky, as if waiting for something more than light. When he finally turned and saw her, he didn't smile. He simply bowed and said, "Thank you." They walked without speaking for a time, among the frost-kissed hedges and quiet birdsong. Only when they reached the old cedar tree at the garden's edge did she speak. "Why here?" she asked softly. "I come here to think," he said. "It's the only place where I'm not an emperor." "And what are you?" Then he looked at her, a man who failed to see beauty without being told where to look. Serafina stopped walking. "I was never angry because you didn't love me," she said. "I was angry because you didn't bother to see me." "I see you now," he said. "Do you?" She turned to face him fully. "I'm not a portrait. I'm not a poem. I am difficult. I speak too plainly. I cry when I'm frustrated, and I laugh too loud when I'm scared." He stepped closer. "Then let me know those things, all of them, and when it becomes inconvenient, then I will learn how to be better." The wind lifted her braid slightly. "You rejected me once." "I did," he said, "and I won't ask for another chance." A pause. "I'll earn it." She looked away, toward the palace, toward the mountains beyond it. "I don't want to be a princess anymore," she whispered. "Then don't be," he replied. "Be the woman who made an emperor kneel. Be the one who rewrote the ending." A long silence, and then, for the first time, she smiled, not faintly, not politely, but fully. It softened her whole face, lit her from within. He looked at her, stunned. "That," he said, "is the most powerful thing I've ever seen." They did not kiss, they did not make promises, but they sat beneath the cedar tree until the sun rose over the horizon. The world, once again, began to notice them. Only this time, they noticed each other first. Years later, the halls of the Winter Palace would tell many stories, but none so often as that of Princess Serafina of Lys, not for her beauty, not for her title, but for the courage to be seen as she truly was. The painting once hung on the grand wall, now replaced by a new portrait. This one showed a woman standing tall, eyes fierce and unapologetic, smile bright with life and defiance. Visitors would whisper, she was more than a princess, she was a revolution. Serafina never sought to change herself to fit a mold. She changed the world's view of what a princess could be. And the emperor, he learned to see with new eyes, not the eyes of a ruler, but of a man who had fallen in love with the woman behind the canvas. If you have ever felt unseen, unheard, or unworthy because he didn't match someone else's expectations, let Seraphine's story remind you that true beauty lies in truth, courage, and being unapologetically yourself. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe. For more timeless tales of love, resilience, and the power of authenticity, your next favorite story awaits. Thank you for watching.